Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 7 of Conversations About America, where we talk about important and relevant topics. My distinguished panel is Michael Landingham, presidential candidate in 2020 and again in 2024. Essence Rains, podcaster and hostess of Deceptively Unique, and Quentin Ford, host of a great talk show called Let's Talk. Welcome, everybody. Glad to have you with me as usual.
Glad to be here, Steve, and everyone else. Michael, Essence.
Hi, everybody. I hope everyone had a wonderful week.
Yeah.
I hope everybody's doing well. Good evening to everyone who's watching and attending.
Well, tonight, as you know, we're going to be talking about the Willie Lynch Letter. That's something that Essence has been waiting to get into. And it is a very interesting letter and a very controversial letter. And if you're watching this and you've never heard of the Willie Lynch Letter, I encourage you to Google it. You can find videos of people reading the letter. You can find written manuscripts. It's definitely very informative, and it's definitely a part of American history. So with that in mind, I'll say, how should we proceed? Essence, would you like to start us out with whatever you want to say about the Willie Lynch Letter?
Well, I would like to say that I actually discovered it. I stumbled upon it because I'm always looking for newfound knowledge, something to learn. Every day I try to learn something different. And I actually stumbled upon it on YouTube. The Willie Lynch Letter and How to Make a Slave. And when I first listened to it, I was actually in tears because every single aspect of it, you can actually see the results of it in today's African American community.
Yeah. So what do you think, Michael?
Well, I mean, I agree with Essence 100% because, I've heard about it years ago, and, a lot of this, what we learn as adults, we're not learning in school when we was growing up. So, so I had to take a real hard look at it. And like I said, we were living through the end results of that letter. And the guy who came up with that letter, the plan for us to be broken down, for us to be submissive, for us to be dependent instead of independent, to really solidify us as slaves. And I believe what we're going through right now is a modernization for another 300 years if we do not step up and make some really hard choices and force some hard changes. We're free right now, supposedly. Well, not supposedly. We are more free right now than when we were still slaves, or right after we got through supposedly being not slaves anymore. So from the letter, it was a discussion, the display of the worst of humanity. And if America is supposed to be about the home of the brave, land of the free, home of the brave, and all that, and the Constitution is supposed to meant for all of us, I don't think for the country alone, but for the world. And if we're not meeting that guideline, then everything else will fall by the wayside. And but I believe there's a light at the end of the tunnel that keeps traveling forward, coming together. But we have to reject what that letter represents, and the continuous fight to prove that what that individual tried to prove so far right now, the end result, just like Essence had said, that we're living the end results. We got to prove that we may be, but we can overcome it as long as we can come together.
Yeah. When?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut anybody off, but Michael, I kind of disagree with you. I believe that we are more slaves now in the African
Oh
American
yeah, I agree.
community. I believe that
I
we are
agree.
more
I agree.
slaves now than we were when we were actually in slavery. Because right now, uh, because of the letter, because of the instruction that will follow to a
Mm,
T, and we are turning on that access,
mm.
excuse me, and it is scary to me that we have been under so much psychological warfare for hundreds of years and had no idea.
That was a plan overall, and I agree with you 100% with that. I wasn't trying to sound like we're right now. We're not enslaved. We are. I did say we're modernized. They modernized it. I'm just saying we still have more freedoms to try to reach out and try to make a change more so than back then. You know what I'm saying? They had to work hard to even get the freedom that they supposedly got. But I'm just saying we have a little bit. It's still hard for us, for our generation, but uh, we came a long way, reached out from that point of view, from that starting point for freedom to leading up to now. The fight is continuous, but we're still enslaved. I mean, but we still got to fight. It doesn't really matter if we're enslaved more now than before, or whatever. We still got to take the fight to them.
Okay, Quentin?
It's funny. I've heard about the letter for about 25, 26 years. I actually have the letter in a book form. And lately, in the last 10 or 15 years, the letter kind of has been debunked as a myth, which is interesting because for three of your panelists on the show that are African American, even though it has been debunked by three historians, I think three African Americans on your panelists can say that everything in that letter we've witnessed in our own communities, which is kind of scary. And when you're dealing with um, a government that was not for us in the beginning, and you know, it's always a question of whether they're for us now. We have to realize that let's not just minimize slave owners as just these owners of land. We're talking about some of the most manipulative people of the human race when you're talking about deception, psychology, sociology. So let's just say the letter isn't authentic. Like I said, for three African Americans on your panel, we have seen the sexism in our community. We have seen the colorism in our community. We have seen the lack of respect for the old and the new and the young. We have literally seen everything in that letter to be true. So for an African American, it would be very hard for them to believe that it would be very hard for them to believe that the debunking of the letter was done thoroughly. I don't think that most African Americans that are using some type of critical thinking will say, "Oh, this letter is not true," because of what the contents say and how it has continuously affected our community. So, I think that one of the issues in the discussion is like when we look at how people plan and plot and make these decisions based for our lives back then up until now, like, and I think Michael was going to it, how it's not really, it may appear to be more of a colorism thing, but really it's more like a classism thing. I believe it's more like a classism thing now. It's more like the rich and the poor, the haves and the have nots,
Yeah.
as most people would say, the elite, and how they have us fighting over crumbs, how they have us fighting over the race issue, the feminism issue, the colorism issue. And one of the biggest things is that they those powers that be would hate to see us unifying because we know the difference between right and wrong.
Yeah.
Whether you're black, white, or whatever, if you're gonna stand on truth, you're gonna stand up with whoever's standing up on truth. And I think that would probably be the issue. But this letter, like I said, I don't want to reiterate, keep going back and forth with the same issue, because the topic of your show is the letter. But I think that, like I said, this letter, let's just say it wasn't true. Whoever designed it, whoever thought of it, they had a very diabolical mind, and you had to really be thinking with a lot of fortitude, a lot of knowledge of the African American people. That type of letter did not come from someone who would just be an owner of a plantation. Whoever came up with that letter,
Very
whether it's
intelligent
myth
person.
or whatever, it's very intelligent. They know sociology, they know psychology, they know people, they know how we react. Because one of the things that I always try to come across, because race is such a major issue now, and race is a clickbait type of thing. Whether you believe race is a social construct in America or not, outside of America, yes, it is different races, but outside of America, it's really tribes and tribalism. So it's very hard for us to understand that, because we've been conditioned to think, oh, it's black, white, Latino, Asian, or whatever. But when you're dealing in the world scale, you're dealing with tribes. And I think if we were to get to understand that, we would understand why those slaves were sold off, because they were from a specific tribe. I don't think people realize, oh, they just sold us. Our people sold us. We were at the point of no return. They kicked us. It's a little bit of tribalism in there. So with that, I know the discussion is the letter. So, I don't want to go too far into it and,
Okay.
have this discussion.
So
Well,
does it even
Quentin, I
matter
wanna
if it's
also-
legitimate or not? I mean, like you said, it's clearly something that that psychology was used and that strategy and it's still being used. So does it really matter if if there really was a Willie Lynch or not? Does that matter? What do you think?
I think one of the things that Stephen, you're a little older than us three. I think one of the things for myself, Michael, in essence, as African Americans, is that the civil rights movement for us, we kind of didn't get the message, so to say. And what I mean by that is we were told what the civil rights movement was about. Instead of like a lot of things being passed down. For example, it may be 10 people that we know about in the civil rights movement, but it was thousands of people that are still living. Me and you discussed it before, Steve. It's a lot of them still alive today that'll really tell you how the message from the civil rights movement kind of got derailed. And what I mean by that is that we're still literally fighting for the same exact thing. So with what I'm saying, how it ties in with this letter, when this letter allegedly appeared, what was done was J. Edgar Hoover, he was very concerned about any outside influences affecting the republic, and he was very cautious and overly paranoid of the black people in America getting ideas from the outside world, far as Russia, China, becoming socialist, basically attacking what he considered the democracy. So one of the things that they realized in the 60s were one of the best ways to destroy the civil rights movement was to destroy the black family. And this is when this letter kind of like appeared.
Yeah.
So with destroying the black family, pitting us against each other, I'm not trying to preach no politics, nobody, but the welfare system was the worst thing that ever happened for the black community, because it made the woman have to kick the man out. Now the man might have couldn't find a job or whatever circumstances, he might have didn't go to Vietnam or came back from Nam and was hurt or whatever. In order for her to receive benefits for their children, he had to go.
I never thought of that.
So now he got demasculated. He
Yeah.
was no longer a man.
Mhm.
A man. He just was a male.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think the more that we understand what Hoover did and what Hoover was about and how he investigated all of these American citizens that he thought would destroy the republic, he was set out to destroy them. And even we go back to the metaphor that he used for Fred Hampton. He will not let a black messiah rise. And even some people believe that this thing goes on today within the CIA and the FBI. So if we can understand the tactics that was done during COINTELPRO and with this letter, it kind of all makes sense.
What does this tell us about humanity in general, do you think? Essence?
I believe that it doesn't look good for humanity collectively to sit there for one race to target another race so wholly. Um, it is scary to me that people like this actually existed before and they still exist. Quentin was absolutely correct. I like the go back to that when he was talking about welfare and how they took the black man out of the household. They literally, that was the start of pitting the black man and the black woman against each other. The black woman does not respect the black man anymore. I mean, I'm talking right now. It is sad. The black woman does not know how to be the black man's piece. All of that is designed to keep us, separate. It's scary to me because why did we as black people pose such a threat, and why do we pose such a threat even to this day, that they are still continuing with these tactics? I was told a long time ago that whoever controls the media controls the world. The images that they put out there constantly about the black woman or the black man, you never see anything, no positive images of us ever. Too funny that anything ratchet, oh yeah, you're going to see that 1,000 times over, but anything positive, you never see that. They are controlling everything even now.
Yeah. Do you think this letter should be spread around nowadays? Do you think it would help our society? Do you think it would be hurt our society? What do you think if it were to become common knowledge? Would that be good or bad?
It is common knowledge.
You think it is?
It is. It's out there for us, but because they started putting the narratives out there that is not real, it makes people think otherwise, and so it's out there. It just, I don't know. People, a lot of people tend to hear things and then not want to hear things.
Yeah.
I don't know if some people are just not ready to totally, I guess, understand what we were subjected to. I guess people don't want to really believe the truth, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, I know that information has been available for a long time, but I don't think a lot of people, I think most people have never heard of it. I went through 12 years of school. I went through college. I got a doctorate degree, and I'd never heard this letter until Essence, you mentioned it.
No, it's not taught in the schools.
Yeah.
It's not.
One of the things, excuse me, I don't mean to cut you guys off. It was a quote in the movie Great Debaters that I love to say when I mentioned that these discussions are about. And he said, to be born without record is to be not born at all. One of the issues that a African American face, and I'll just say a Native Black American, because I know the African American word bothers some people, is we have a major, for us, Steve, we have a major identity crisis. Um, a person like Michael, myself, in essence, when we track our lineage back, most of us can track our lineage back to probably 5 or 6 generations. However, because of slavery, it kind of shaped our traditions when it comes to how we deal with things emotionally, spiritually, physically. And I think that we're always evolving. So the information may be there, but it's like, wow. Like, for example, last week when we discussed feminism, right? If a female did not do history on the feminism and the suffrage movement, she would say, "Oh, I'm all right. I'm down with that. I agree. Like, I'm fighting for my independence." But once you say that, and then you start believing in the ideology, if you don't understand the ideology came from a racist perspective, it will destroy not only your way of thinking, but how you will deal with your kids and how you will deal with your mate. And this is some of the things that, if we study slavery in other countries, the slaves never lost their lineage. They never lost their name. They never lost who they were as a place of origin. The difference between them and the chattel slavery in America is they were robbed of everything. They were robbed of even where they were from. I'm quite sure if the people that believe in the DNA thing, some of us may got traces from East Africa. Now that would sound unheard of. Be like, how do I got East Africa in me? Because most of us were taught that the slaves were on the western part of Africa. But it just goes to show that because we are descendants of slaves, a lot of what would be common knowledge, information off the top of our hand, and foods, even our diet, in our diet and our bodies were not made to withstand eating food in a cold climate. It sounds crazy, but our bodies are not used to eating this type of food. This is why we lead in obesity, high blood pressure, heart disease, because we were sun people. And for example, if you look at corn, which is in everything that we eat, it does nothing nutrition for the body whatsoever. It should basically just be used for fuel. So I don't want to take away from your question, Steve, but I think that a lot of times we as descendants of slaves, we don't really understand how robbed we were, so to say, in learning our identity and learning who we are. Even though Michael, I'll never forget a couple of shows ago, he was explaining that he was a descendant of Robert Lee. He should be proud of that. And
I believe
nobody
he
should
is.
feel like,
I
oh,
believe he is.
he's upset about that. But I'm just saying,
Oh
like,
no,
to be
I'm not
able to
upset.
find your lineage is something to be proud of.
I'm cool. I'm cool with Robert E. Lee because it shows where my message about running for president, uniting people, and I have a unique connection to the followers of Robert E. Lee and the Confederacy and all that, and showing as a black man what I'm trying to do, and especially when my life was threatened because of the same system of what we're talking about because of the letter, how it started off. Yeah, all right. Just wanted to give you a thumbs up on that.
Let me ask you this.
I wasn't trying to take away from your question, Steve. I apologize.
Yeah, okay. Something that I felt when I was reading this letter and listening to the audio, I'm not going to minimize what it did to the black people. I know that's how that minimized. But can you see that it's also to an extent that same psychology has been used by the rich and powerful against everybody in our country? Can you see that also?
Wait. I want to say this because I mentioned this earlier. I didn't realize today this was the topic of discussion. You already told me last week. In essence, I brought it up, but the last few days, I just kind of like really thought about it, and then yesterday, I'm sorry, early today, I thought about like, they said about a letter about how to make a slave out of the black man, right? There got to be a secret letter about how to make a slave out of the white man, about mentally trying to fool every white person, about how black people, Mexicans, Arabs, everybody else is different. They're the problem why the earth is what it is, why our country is what it is. And they've been playing that same methodical game plan, not just for black people, but for white people as well.
Mhm.
So I just thought I wanted to add that. I thought about that as well too. Should be a letter for that.
Yeah, I mean, they're still disturbing us. They're still pitting us against one another, whether it's black, white, men against women, Republicans against Democrats, whatever. They use that same strategy to get everybody against each other. So we look to them, and you mentioned you're still slaves. Well, all the people that are not property owners and people that are not owners of industries, we work for them and they pay us enough to live on, but we have to keep working in order to live.
Barely,
Right.
barely live.
That's
Barely,
it.
barely live.
So in a sense,
Barely.
now I'm not saying I'm in the same boat as you folks, but I'm just saying
Yeah, I know.
to an extent, they use that same psychology against everyone. Do you see what I'm saying?
They do, but it's not to the extent that
Right.
it is
Oh,
that it affects
Right.
black people. You can see it manifest in, especially in black women. Black women suffer from low self-esteem. And it is because of them pitting us against each other. The team light skin, the team dark skin, the tall, the short, the big, the small. It manifested completely within black women, and it is it's bad. It's
Steve,
really bad.
Steve, I can tell you a phrase. I can say the essence right now, which most black women may take as a compliment, but it really is an insult. And she's heard this phrase all her life. She's a strong black woman.
Yes,
That's an insult.
yes, it
That's
is an
an
That's
insult.
an insult. That's an insult. Because of what black women have been through since slavery, to be strong, um, to endure what they went through during the medical apartheid, and understanding what they went through with the whole gynecologist industry. When black women have pregnancies and they say they're in pain, the doctors won't give them pain medication based off of the strong black women theory. It really makes you think. Like I said, we're dealing with real sick people that have this ideology, that take on this ideology of control, and how they have. I mean, race. When you sit back and think about it, race should not even be a trigger issue anymore. You would feel like after all these years, we're beyond that. But that's like the go-to move. When everything else isn't working, let's throw some race out there. And how a lot of us fall for um, the monkey in the tailpipe. I just want to tie it in. Just look at what our president Biden said. He said that George Floyd dying may have been bigger than Martin Luther King being killed. What?
Really?
Now
Wait,
he
wait,
said
repeat,
this.
repeat, repeat that, repeat
He
that
said
again. Wait a minute, what did he
George
say?
Floyd dying may have been bigger than Martin Luther King being killed.
Who?
Like this is what they not, and I'm not
Wow.
saying that
Wow.
anything against him,
Isn't Biden
No, but
racist?
still,
but this is the ideology
I
where
mean,
they
hell, he
would have
signed a
us
94
thinking.
crime bill. He signed a 94 crime bill that pretty much allowed police officers to do what they've been doing leading up to George Floyd. And then sitting there talking about getting sympathy from George Floyd's family, talking about, thank you, Mr. President, for showing care and concern about my son or my brother or my uncle, whatever. And you're the one signed the damn bill in 94? that
because
led all the way. I mean, come on,
it
man.
goes back to what I
Come
was
on.
saying, that when all else fails, let's throw the race out there, and they'll just fight like a bunch of people,
But
like
they want
nuts.
to play like we're stupid and we're going to forget because we go through so much of our problems and we're so much at each other's throats and we're so disagreeable about policies or about color, just like you said, Clinton. And we have to. They're going to continue. They're going to continue to use confusion, delusionment, lies, fear, and possibly try to kill somebody in order to keep the power and everything going for them. While we're sitting there dying, figuring out about this COVID, figuring out should we go back to work fully or not. Even vaccinated people, they know the whole deal. They know the whole deal, but they're not going to tell us because they got a hidden agenda. Now, here's my solution to the whole problem. Whites, blacks, Puerto Ricans, Asians, everyone who loves freedom, everyone who believes in that our children are the future, then how damn it we got to leave something better for our children than our parents left us. And we're at a moment in the crossroads here in American history where we know the truth as black people. We may not see it in the streets of Chicago where we're killing each other and other places because of crime and everything like that. But deep down, if we had somebody to give us that spark, to speak the truth, to bring and waken the American spirit, I guarantee you things will turn around. That's the only way we can defeat and overcome the status quo. Now, Joe Biden looks like to me he's part of it because of my story, what's going on with me. If he was truly for black people, if he was truly about bringing people together, why is he still kind of connected to the old, same old, same old? Why did the Democratic Party choose the same old when the people wanted somebody new?
Yeah.
The system is still the system. They can paint it with a different face or whatever. It's the same person. It's the same idea.
Yeah.
You say different parties with the same bullcrap. So I
And
mean,
we watched
overall,
it-
we gonna have to come together. Whites, blacks, all of us come together.
We watched it evolve as we talked about Reconstruction and, the Jim Crow laws and everything. I mean, we've seen it just evolve. The language changes from generation to generation, but it stays the same, right? It stays the same.
I believe if you were not told that the North won the war, I don't think that's believable. Because I hate to say it, usually if you read any history on battles and wars or whatever, the winner usually can tell the history. It's like the North, they hid the history. And it's like, why would you hide the history if you won?
Why do they do that?
I think that my view about the Civil War is that they'll try to say it was over race, and I think race was like probably fifth or sixth on the list. It was for basically the control of the control of the Union.
Yes.
The thing is that our country plays the game with immigration. Whenever they know that the dissenting view is rising, what they'll do is they'll open the floodgates for immigrants who believes in American values, and they'll think that the dissenting voice are the bad people. When this country started on dissension should be the core and the fabric of the country. We should never turn our back on the dissenting voice. They have a voice. But what this country does is a dissenting voice is always considered the enemy. And then you'll bring in immigrants, no matter what race they are, who love America for what they think America is. And they'll come in and they'll try to make them more American than the dissenting voice. So it's like a never ending cycle, because even during the early 1900s, as a kid living up from North Jersey, I went to Ellis Island. And you actually can visualize how the floodgates of a lot of the Polish, a lot of Italians, the Irish, a lot of the Irish over here, Norwegians, how they came in and they actually were more American than the people that were already here. it's a weird thing. It's something that really
What do you mean?
this country to be not as
What do you mean by that?
because if you look at the Italian American, for example, the Italian American up until the early 1900s was not even considered white. They just were considered white recently. They were considered basically the N-word. If you look at this book called Race by Law, this is why most people feel like race is a social construct. Because if you weren't considered 100% Anglo-Saxon, you were not considered white in America. Even the Irish Americans were not considered 100% white. And if you look at the structure of the country, like where I live at now in Pennsylvania, you got Polish, a lot of Russians, and a lot of different immigrants. They were placed in certain regions in the country strategically.
Yeah.
When they came through Ellis Island, oh, we're going to put you here, like in Dearborn, Michigan. Dearborn, Michigan has the biggest Arab immigration area in the country. And the reason why is because during the Iraq and Iran war, the United States opened up the floodgates and they basically started communities with immigrants. It's an interesting thing what this country does.
Yeah.
I have a question about that real quick.
What is what they're saying it is. It's just totally opposite.
What you were just speaking of, is that the one drop rule? Okay.
Mm-hmm. It's a very interesting book called Race by Law. I mean, it's interesting. And if you ever talk to any, and this is why it was so significant when President Kennedy became the president. He was the first Irish Catholic president. This was a big thing. This was a big thing when he became the president because Irish people were not considered white. But we think we've evolved. So now it's like, oh, it's white and black. No.
I remember when I was a kid, when John Kennedy was elected president, my dad, he really went off on the tirade. He said, I don't know which is worse, whether he's a Democrat or whether he's a Catholic. But he wasn't happy.
And when you sit back and think about that, it's like, it makes you really think. Times may appear to change, but it all falls into what the powers that be, what they have planned and how they plan. Even goes back to, I'm a big reader, you guys, so you'll hear me quote books a lot. Even goes back to how the banking industry created what it's created now on Jekyll Island. Like it's amazing. It'll make you be like, how'd this happen? But it happens for a reason. Powers that be, and they make decisions on our lives 30, 40 years ago that are affecting us now.
Yeah, you mentioned Jekyll Island. That's also something that most people don't know about. That's a very interesting story right there. And it also goes to show about the diabolical psychology that goes into controlling people. I mean, that was the rich and powerful people planning everything out, planning the way they was going to make their banking system that they owned take over everything. And they've done a good job of it. I mean, they run the world.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't know if it's going to get any better. I wish I could say it.
And this is why you hear most people, historians are saying about a great reset, because a lot of people are predicting that we're being reset from a lot of the things that was instituted in 1913 with the Jekyll Island thing and the Institute of Social Security, the IRS. So many things happened in 1913 and to 1921, where the country was broke. After slavery, the country was broke. They did not have free laborers no more. And you might have had some people sharecropping, but the country was in major trouble, so they had to do certain things in order to make money and, come up with the Fed, which is not part of our government. So
Right.
I think that the construction of race and all this stuff, it all ties together.
That's why most people, I think, misunderstand that because the word federal is in the Federal Reserve, they think it's the government, but it's really a private bank owned by a bunch of billionaires. I mean, that's what it is. Has absolutely nothing to do with being part of the government.
I remember,
Yet they tell the government what to do. So that's the big diabolical
Right.
part right there. They got the billionaires and the politicians in cahoots together, teaming up against everybody else. The whole divide and conquer thing.
and I don't want to interrupt. I just want to say one thing pertaining to that with the Fed. Now, I think before the Fed was created, Thomas Jefferson was president, and he already saw the bankers was trying to get into politics and got their hands already into politics. And he was going to restrict their charter, the bank charter, for like 20 years if they continue on the threat of trying to gain more power through within government. And he was right, leading up to now. So what Quentin and what you, Steve, have said, it pretty much is the end result of what Jefferson has spoke about before.
Yeah.
It's funny because some of the rhetoric that the former president used was, I think he woke up a sleeping giant. What I mean by that is some of the rhetoric he used was like, oh, this guy's against the establishment. He's against the lobbyist. But unfortunately, our government is not the government of yesteryear. This government is all corporations, all lobbyists. Follow, as they say, follow the money. Follow the money.
You don't have to go too far to see it.
Money, 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 money.
Yeah. Well, it's been an interesting
You
conversation.
really don't, and we have to change from that.
No.
I was going to say one more thing, Steve. We have to change from that because if we keep continuing to go the route we're going, we're going to fall. We're going to falter. We're going to fall. We're going to dissolve into nothing, and the world's going to follow behind that because we represent what the Constitution represents is not the Constitution. The Constitution represents something that was beyond its time, even though it was slavery and the world was in turmoil at the time. Even though right now we're still going through hell on earth, but this living document entails what we could be. When it says to make our more perfect, continuation of trying to make it happen, it gives us the room and the aptitude to do so, but you got to have the will. And the combination of different ideas and people without being afraid of one another, as the current system has been allowing us to do. And we have to grow from that. But we have the right leadership. Joe Biden is not the one. That's why I've, not formally, but I've, been putting out there, like testing the waters that I am going to run. And only because that I'm outside the framework, I'm one of you. I care about the same things you care about. And we need a real 180 here in America, or we're not going to make it.
Yeah. Well, I think we've had a good discussion. I hope people watching have learned some things. And I do encourage anybody, like I said before, if you don't know what the Willie Lynch letter is, Google it. You need to hear this, read it. It's a big part of our history. It tells about the diabolical scheme of how the rich white landowners controlled and dominated the slaves, brutalized, and it's horrible. But we can see it all really happen just that way. And I am glad that I can have this conversation with you folks. I really do, because I wish there would be more conversations like this. So many people put up the walls, that we got to choose side. Well, that's white folks against the black folks and
See, the thing,
vice versa.
Steve, the thing is that like I said, they don't want to talk about the history of slavery too much. They'll tell you just enough. They'll tell all of us just enough. But if you go back into the people like Michael brought up, Thomas Jefferson, I just use him for example, and him being a slave owner, some of the things that he did to his slaves and some of the things that he did to his family, because some of the slaves were his family. I don't think it speaks about everybody to an extent that it wasn't. It was a lot of slave owners, direct descendants that was not with the slavery thing. So I think that though you do try to make a change for good, I think one of the things that we do is you got to still tell these stories. You got to still explain to people what happened, why it happened, and what happened after. Because what happened after, I mean, we discussed it a couple podcasts ago. I think what happened after might be even worse. What happened with the Freedmen Bank and how that led to all the freedmen losing their money, and that led to what we consider the FDIC now, and so forth in the banking industry and redlining and the access to GI bills from troops and because I don't think most white people really understand that there were black people. Christopher Addicks was the first person killed during the Revolutionary War. He was a black man, and I don't think people know that. Most people say, was he a slave then, or was he already freed? I don't know if that matters, but I think that if most person killed during the Revolutionary War was a black man, I think they would. Like I said, I think our history is dark. It's like the black eye that nobody wants to look at. Just put glasses on. Turn your head to the right. No, it's there. Look at it. Let it heal. Put a stake on it. Let the stake suck the blood out of it. So, I don't mean to take away from the Willie Lynch theory, but you're right. Even in the text of the letter, it speaks about the diabolical stuff, the mind, the mindset, all the way up to the tyrant Hitler, what our country did with his scientists. We didn't lock his scientists up. We kind of studied these people and used their tactics.
Yes.
We brought them over here.
Yeah.
We brought them over here. We brought their families over here. They was kumbaya. What the hell? Why the hell you see the people out there waving the flags? Because they've been bred. They've been seated here from the very beginning. I mean,
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, right?
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Quentin, what should we talk about next week, brother? I'll let you decide this time. And we'll let Michael decide next time.
I don't know. I don't know if
Well,
Steve.
you can think about it. You can let me know in a day or two if you want.
Okay.
Okay.
Definitely.
Well, thanks again, all of you. I appreciate it very much. It's always a pleasure. And we will see you again next week. And folks, be sure to check out Quentin's podcast, Let's Talk. Check out Essence's podcast, Deceptively Unique. And when it comes time to vote for president again, Michael Landingham would like to have your vote. Right?
Yeah, I need the link to your podcast, Essence. I'm Steve, if you don't mind, I just want to tell her something I'm doing. In the next couple of weeks, I'm doing a panel show on the medical apartheid and women. It's going to be a bunch of women on there. I'll be the only man, and just basically talk about the history of the gynecologist, what was done. We probably will get into Margaret Sanger. So I don't know if you know a lot about her, which you should, in Planned Parenthood and what because a lot of people feel like Planned Parenthood has been good. I have my personal opinion about Planned Parenthood, so you can definitely come with what you feel about Planned Parenthood. And
Well, maybe
I really don't want to talk about. So we're gonna have a very interesting show in a couple weeks on that.
Well, I will make sure that you get my link. I did want to say before we close out that in researching the Willie Lynch letter and how to make a slave, there were a couple things that I am going to be addressing. I have a new series that's going to be airing on my podcast called Conspiracies of Essence. Real quick, 1712 was when the letter came out. They said that everything was going to be spinning on the axis for 300 years. 300 years later was 2012, also the year of the Mayan prediction. So I'm going to be covering that. I got to do some more research. I'm learning. Like it's a conspiracy, but it's got to be a correlation.
I'll just say this. I'll leave you with this. Do you know where the word conspiracy came from?
I do not.
It came from the FBI.
Oh, okay.
is that true or is that a conspiracy?
No, that's true.
Now I have a question about that. Quentin. Now you might be right about that. If my memory serves me correct, but was that started off during the Roswell incident?
Yeah. They try what it is that they say conspiracy trying to debunk what people really witnessed. I mean, Steve, you're a little older than us. Even to take it a step further, I can imagine all these years they told people about Roswell and all this stuff, but now they're admitting to some unidentified flying objects. Just put it like that. So I just say that
it's called UAPs.
Yeah. So
not UFOs, UAPs.
So with the word conspiracy,
difference?
when you sit back and a lot of people like to say, "Oh, conspiracies are debunked." I don't know about that.
It's a big conspiracy itself, isn't it?
I don't know if you can. Hey, listen. All I can say, Essence. I wish you a lot of luck. Luck in the way of when you go down that road of studying, getting information, and getting things to collaborate. It'll take you on a journey. It's gonna be fun. I'm here if you need any help with anything. I'm an avid reader. I've read over 500 books alone that I can count offhand. I'm a big reader. I actually used to sleep with books. I sleep with my tablet now. I say that to say that when you can put pieces together, because that's all it is putting a puzzle together, and you understand. For example, the 60s were key. 1960 to 1969, this country,
remember it. It was rough.
Yeah.
It was rough.
Yeah.
Seems like every time you get on the
And
TV,
why that war?
there's some kind of a riot going on a college campus.
Just look at the war. Just look at the wars. I don't think that we have ever fought a war that did not have other meanings. Every war was for purposes outside of defending ourselves or defending our. It was always defending our interest because you'll see.
The interest of the rich and famous. So,
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks again, folks. And I will tell you good night. And thanks everyone for tuning in to Conversations About America. Please continue to watch and you just might learn something every week. I do. Good night, folks.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate everything. Good night, everyone.
You too. Night.